And although it's raining, it's going to prove a positive between 11 and 1 o'clock today. You can expect some activity outside on the roadway. I don't know if you know this, but this is the home of Sojourner Truth. And this area in the Hudson Valley by Catskills is rich with so much history and beautiful landscape. I'd like to take a moment before we get started with the formalities to introduce some of the people who are here today. Not everyone's in the room yet, but we have some incredible chapter presidents here, and we have our honored guest speaker. First of all, I'd like to welcome and introduce Carol Irvin, our Ulster chapter president, who has helped to put this wonderful convention together. David Cardo, who is the Ulster chapter delegate. Both of these individuals have done a wonderful job of helping the state office and putting together a wonderful press conference, which I'll address later today. So we're very, very pleased with their assistance. Marcia Pappas, our dynamic executive vice president, who has done a wonderful job of coordinating every detail of this convention, imaginable and unimaginable. Dorothy Dama, our now New York State chair, who we are so happy to have with us, who we hope will continue forever with us. Our incredible secretary, Carol Connolly, who is ready with her laptop today. To my right is Sue Fell, our parliamentarian, who is joining us from the far reaches of the state from Buffalo. We have an incredible treasurer. I don't see her in the room. She's wearing red. She's registered. Point to her when she comes in. Her name is Mary Lou McBean, and she's just an incredible, incredible treasurer. Ann White, our membership vice president, couldn't be with us today because of health, so we will miss her. And we expect a couple past now presidents who I'll bring to your attention will come in, Maureen Connell and Teresa Bergen. From the chapter of Brooklyn, we have wonderful Shirley Rance, chapter president, and the wonderful, incredible delegates, incredible chapter. We have various workshop people here today. Marcia Frost from Central New York, our Central New York president. And I think that takes care of a lot of people in the room here. So if I've neglected one, please let me know. In the very back of the room, we are so pleased to have with us today our honored guest speaker, someone who's come from the far reaches of Long Island, Bill Baird, and his wife, Arlene. And just to call complete attention to an incredible person who just walked in the door, Geraldine Gibson, put together, she is the now New York State assistant. She's incredible. She's going to lobby, and she put together the media outreach. And she literally taped convention notices on everyone's back in the town of Woodstock last Friday. Melissa Woodward is out doing some things right now. She is also the office assistant, and she has done an incredible job putting together a journal and all of the other types of brochures, so we thank her for that. And Carrie Bedemarco, I don't see you. She's our Albany intern. She's out at the front desk. She has long brown hair. She's also an Albany delegate. So thank you, everyone who's helping us from Ulster County at the registration desk. And at this time, I'd like to call the meeting to order. I see that we have a quorum, and we will get started right now with the business of the organization. The first item on our list today in your packet, we want to take this out.
Oh, that's okay.
This is some of the convention rules. First thing we have to
Not
is the adoption of the rules. And just to help you a little bit through the day, if you want to take out this sheet, I believe it's on the right side of the folder. This explains the convention rules that we need to follow. And just a brief review, if you've been a member of now New York State for 60 days, you're credentialed to vote. So you can vote during this morning and also tomorrow when we propose resolutions and vote on those resolutions. And you have a green card in your packet if you're credentialed. When you want to vote, you're going to raise that card up in the air so that the chair can see it. Only now New York State members who can vote can submit motions. You need to submit your motions to the Secretary, Carol. We have motion forms that are out on the front desk, and they must be signed. The packet also describes the resolution rules at length, and as far as the issue hearings, we have a way through these issue hearings of bringing these resolutions to the floor. So we meet in the issue hearings tomorrow, come up with ideas. Someone will then propose a resolution. The resolution must be written, it must be printed, and on your form here, under resolution rules, it describes how to prepare them. If you need help, anyone on the front table here can help you put them together. They need to be printed, they need to be written clearly, and as an addition, I'd like to request that they be written on every other line, because if we have proposed amendments, it makes it easier for the chair to work with any potential changes. Also, they need to be presented to Marcia. Marcia, raise your hand, by 12:30 tomorrow, okay? We won't have a lot of time to do it, but we will have enough time. If you can't find Marcia, leave them at the front desk before or by 12:30, and we will pick them up. Are you ready for adoption of the rules for the conference? Okay. Is there any objection? Yes, I would like to see a motion. Somebody do that. Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Okay. All those in favor, raise your green card. Okay. All those opposed? The rules have been adopted for the conference. The next item, which is the issue we have to deal with, is adoption of the agenda. Do we have any discussion on the agenda? The agenda is right inside your journal. Flip it open and see agenda right at the top. You need to look at the different parts of the agenda and let the chair know if you have any discussion on the agenda. Any discussion, any motions? Yes?
For Sunday morning, we need to change the workshop and issue hearings. The issue hearings are going to come first, 9:30 to 10:30, and the workshop will be the 10:45 slot. So we're just flipping everything. The times are the same, we're just putting the issue hearings first and the workshop second.
Marcia, for point of information, this sheet here is the accurate.
That's the accurate. This didn't get changed because it went to the printer. We didn't have time to change it.
We have a motion to switch the time slot of workshop session 3 with the issue hearing slot for Sunday. Okay. Then we have a second. Yeah. So the motion is to put the issue hearings and the special workshops from 9:30 to 10:30, and the workshop session from 10:45 to 11:45 on Sunday. Is there any discussion? Okay, it's moved and seconded. Yes?
Could you please tell me, it says issue hearings, this is Sunday, issue hearings and then 2 special workshops. These are going on concurrently?
Yes. Certainly.
The reason for that was that we had all these great workshops proposed to us, and at that point, that was the only time we could put them in. So we said, well, we'll just sort of put them in that time slot and just label them special workshops.
Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Raise your green cards. All opposed? The motion has passed. Any further discussion on the agenda?
Just restate change.
For Sunday, workshop session 3 will be moved. Instead of being, issue hearings and the special workshops will be moved to 9:30 to 10:30 on Sunday. And the workshop session 3 will be 10:45 to 11:45.
You have, what you're looking at is the correct printout. What we're changing here is this. And you have the correct printout.
Okay, now we need a motion to adopt the agenda with these changes. A second? All right, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? The agenda is adopted. Next, I'd like to introduce Ulster Chapter President Carol Urban. We're going to take a moment to do a credentials report. Marcia will report.
As of about 3 minutes ago, when I checked, we had 42 credentials.
Okay, thank you, Marcia, for reminding me about that. Carol Urban, our Ulster County Chapter President, and now is going to welcome you to Kingston.
When I discovered I was going to be welcoming people, I said, what am I supposed to be doing? And Lois said, well, you were the host chapter, you welcome your guests, and you thank all the people who helped you. And I thought, and she said, and you have 5 minutes. Well, I don't know what I'm going to do for 5 minutes. I mean, there have been a lot of people working, and I either do a lot or not very much. Then something came up in this area, which I felt probably would take 10 minutes. So I'm going to do a very brief, but nonetheless heartfelt Thanksgiving, and then get on to the other piece of it. I have to thank David Cardall, who is our chapter secretary, and without whom I suspect we would not have an active chapter. I want to thank all the women from PMS, which is Preserved Medical Secularism. That was a well thought out name. And SOS, which is Save Our Services. We have some real problems in the area of possible takeover of all the hospitals by Catholic directives. And these women, there will be a workshop by Carol Towner. Those of you who are at risk might want to hear something about this. These women have been doing extraordinary work. This conference is happening because of Lois shapiro-canter and Marcia Pappas and Gerald Gibson and Carrie Abbott-Marco and Melissa Woodward, because these are the people up in the state office who are doing an extraordinary job. I did nothing, they did everything. And David. I also want to thank all of the speakers. Some are here, some are not, but you are going to be our inspiration. Also for those people who are doing workshops, you're also our inspiration. Last but not least, all of you who are here. I know in this very brief time between the end of summer vacation and the start of winter, everything tries to get packed into one, and I know you all had to make a lot of decisions to get here. I'm glad you chose to come here. Last week, there was a women's study symposium at SUNY New Paltz, just down the road from here. The 21st Annual Women's Studies Symposium. The subject was very tongue-in-cheek, called Revolting Behavior, Women's Sexuality. It has created a firestorm. As usual, nice ladies aren't supposed to talk about things like this. And the religious right has gotten themselves up into a tailspin and went so far as to request the governor to ask for the resignation of President Roger Bowen. Roger Bowen, in his infinite wisdom, chose to ignore him. And the governor, wit and wisdom of George Kentucky, said, well, this conference is certainly not a free speech issue. So we thought we would like to discuss this a little further, and suddenly over a day, we decided we would try to get a resolution of the body. This is not what my welcoming is supposed to be about. Behavior spontaneous. Let's deal with current reality. I'm going to try, along with some of the other people from Ulster County, to bring together a resolution on free speech. And I'm going to read the kind of early working text. Whereas the right is making an orchestrated attack on SUNY New Paltz President Roger Bowen, using as an excuse his support of 2 recent conferences of knowledge. And whereas both of these conferences explored issues of women's sexuality, a favorite target of the right. Whereas one of these conferences was presented by the Women's Studies program and the other the School of Fine and Performing Arts, whereas the attacks say not, whereas the attackers are saying this is not an issue of free speech, but of tax dollars funding a state university system. And whereas we believe this is precisely an issue of free speech, which is protected by the First Amendment Constitution. And whereas the attacks are focusing only on the controversial parts of conference, and whereas if there is not free speech at a state university, where can there be free speech? Now therefore, the 1997 New York State Convention of the National Organization for Women meeting in Ulster County hereby resolves to express its strong support for President Roger Bowen, for free speech, for the Women's Studies program, and the School of Fine Arts and Performing Arts at College of New Paltz at the State University of New York. This is not your standard welcome, but it's just such an exciting time. It's such a time we think. We picture we can make some statement that really is of the moment. NPR has it, the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. It's a bit whoopee right now. So here's a chance for us to make some comments. So I welcome you all. I think this is going to be a fun time. I hope if you have any questions, do come to David or to me or some of our guests some of our friends from the area, and they can help you find things and know where to go. And let's go. Thanks.
We're going to start the first workshop session at 9:45. We have a few minutes for people to mingle. There's coffee in the back, juice. Please go out, visit the vendors. They would love to take some of your money this weekend. And just have some fun and talk. And if you have any questions, like Carol said, come to me. You know, if you can't find me, someone will find me. And we can make any kind of adjustments that you need. If there are any problems, feel free to ask. So I think that's it. We're going to meet back here at, we're going to meet back here at 11 o'clock. And, yes.
I know we're having a silent auction, but we really shouldn't be silent.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. There is also along the back wall a silent auction. Take a look. We've got some wonderful things back there that were contributed by feminists, and some great books that were signed by the authors, and I believe some artists donated some things. So please, feel free to look back there and put your bids in. And, when we meet back here at 11 o'clock, Lois will be doing her president's address. And then we're going to break for a short while because the hotel people have to come in and set up for the luncheon. And then we'll be back here at 12 for the luncheon. And that's when we'll meet Marsha Gillespie. We'll have our woman-to-woman award. And then I believe we're going to break for just a few minutes in between there. And then we're going to have a presentation by Bill Bader. Also, there's a good possibility many of you may have heard that Randall Terry is going to be picketing us this weekend. That may happen. We hope he is really down. So if you have an umbrella in your car, please get it. Because during that break, between 11:30 and 12, when we're setting up for the luncheon here, if he is out there with his cronies, we're going to try and get as many people in here to go out there and counter that picket. And we know that our good friend Bill Baird has some choice words for Randall Terry. We can't wait. So actually, kind of interesting if he did show up because it strengthens our movement and brings in more people to our side. It shows how crazy they are. So between that, we will know probably by 11 o'clock. We have heard that they will be showing up sometime between 11 and 1. So we will keep everyone informed. So if in fact they are out there at 11:30, we'll be gearing up to go out there. So should be fun. Okay.
Doing this one?
Your duck umbrella? You want me to moon them, Lois? John and I can moon them.
Yes. You gonna film them too?
Well, how far do I have to walk? not getting in the driveway, right? That's not going in, right? If you want to keep moving, you probably can. Who's in charge out here? Who's in charge of this ticket? Whichever ticket you'd like, sir. All right? That's one thing we have to understand, guys. Do not block this area. You understand?
speaking for a while because our next two guests have requested that they be able to speak first and then we all have lunch together. So, my pleasure to introduce Jeannie Besto, who's going to introduce Lois. Jeannie is the Nassau County Now president. Where is she?
Should I give you this stuff?
Oh, you are. Okay. I'm sorry.
How many copies?
So,
A lot of
Jeannie's going to start off
copies
by introducing Lois.
Wait, I have another one. Yeah. Make about, I don't know how many people are here. Make about 50 copies of these.
50 copies of each?
And this, make,
Thanks, Marge, I appreciate that, and it was a pleasure to share my umbrella with you outside. Weren't we really great out there? Okay. I love kicking butt in the morning. It's terrific. And I really think, let's give ourselves another round of applause. It's not easy dealing with people who don't believe in equality, but we do it. We've done it for probably thousands of years, and we'll continue to do it.
25
It's my pleasure to be here, and it's equally
and 20
a
of these.
displeasure. And don't misunderstand me. I love now. I love it. I've been a member for decades. I'm just annoyed that after 200 years since the Constitution was drafted establishing justice and liberty for all, that I had to get out of my warm bed to fight for equal rights. I'm not a morning person. Nevertheless, I'm pleased to be part of the best group of freedom-fighting rebels in the world. And we're right here. Before I introduce Lois Shapiro-Canter, our president, I want to ask how many of you read her biography in the newsletter? How many? 2, 4, 3. Keep it up, Lois. It actually highlighted a pretty impressive resume, and I was impressed, and that takes a whole lot because I usually stand up sleeping. It combined 20 years experience working with the New York State Legislature, including 7 years as an N.O.W. lobbyist, and as a prosecutor for 5 years in the sex crimes unit. Lois championed domestic violence cases, child support, and many other women's issues. These experiences highlight her invaluable credentials and priceless background to serve as president of this great organization. I also believe the experiences bring her a special and unique sensitivity to women's issues and the organizational machines that can pulverize a woman's life. As a prosecutor, she saw the horrors that women go through day after day and year after year. After that amount of time, you've got to develop a keen understanding of how the system works and how it fails, especially for women. These experiences also make Lois eligible for sainthood or the loony bin, one or the other. It's not easy, I'm sure, especially from her point of view, being involved in the legislature for 20 years, to watch the same windbags get elected year after year after year. And it's a difficult position for her. And rather than offer you her formal resume, I'd like to tell you about the woman I've grown to know over the past 2 years. She's tough, she's demanding, she's tenacious, and she's very sensitive. Sensitive to the fact that women are still waiting for their equal rights. Lois is intelligent, and she's smart enough to reach out, as she's done to some of us, for help. She's supportive and politically astute, but most of all, she knows women's issues and is determined to make our lives better. She's always prepared to play hardball with us, with the politicians, and to do battle with the media. I'm pleased Lois is at the helm to steer us through what some say are the rough waters ahead. I'm pleased with her modern visions for this organization she deeply loves. She's a keen businesswoman and a card-carrying leader of now. I'm equally pleased to introduce our dynamic state president, Lois Shapiro-Canter.
Thank you, Jeannie. As usual, your introduction is wonderful. I'd like to welcome all of you here today. It's wonderful to see everyone, and I'd like to welcome Marcia Gillespie. We're so happy that you're here. I'm very excited. You know, the National Organization for Women in New York State was one of the first organizations that came out against the Constitutional Convention earlier this year. As a body, we voted against it. We worked really hard. We lobbied the legislators. We lobbied the communities. We had op-eds appear in various newspapers around the state, Syracuse, Albany, Newsday. We did a press conference. We had people talk to the press. And we won this week overwhelmingly. This is a major victory for women. Women have spoken, and we are going to carry this victory into the 1998 election to elect some significant women to office. Now, just 2 days ago, I had the wonderful experience of having a press conference with Carol Urban. Carol's at the end down here, our Ulster chapter president. And David Cardle, I can't see you where you are, David. You're supposed to be up here. David, you're blending in with everybody else. He's the Ulster delegate, and he helped with the press conference and has done so much to put this event together this weekend. The subject of our press conference had to deal with hospital mergers and the issue of the fact that the terms of hospital mergers around the state are taking into the community Roman Catholic directives to restrict family planning, contraception, and abortion, therefore relying on the rhythm method as a form of family planning. So we spoke out against this because we don't want to take our women back to the dark ages, and we had wonderful press coverage. There's a lot of press, as you can see out in the hallway. We have some of the members of the press with us today. We welcome you. And we intend to turn back this trend in New York State from religious institutions dictating to the women of this state through community taxpayer hospitals what types of reproductive services we can obtain. Secondly, we are going to send a strong message to the Archdiocese in New York State that any type of access that he is trying to restrict to the New York State legislature that we have lobbied successfully for years, he's not going to obtain through this back door through hospital mergers. We've already called upon Governor Pataki and the State Health Commissioner to ensure that any mergers that are approved provide no restrictions. Remember, it's them that have the ultimate say-so, and to do otherwise would be an admission by them that family planning, contraception, and access to safe legal abortion is not on their agenda. The fight for women's rights has been long and hard. We have achieved great things and have battled back persistent reactionary strategies to undercut and destroy our accomplishments. Our proud and distinguished history is today a noble beacon of incentive and inspiration for tomorrow's activists. Yet to know exactly where it is we are going, we must thoroughly examine where it is we have come from. For of course the great lesson of history is that when forgotten, history repeats itself. Not so long ago, Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Sojourner Truth, and Alice Paul fought bravely and hard for our rights. As a result of their efforts, women obtained the right to vote in 1920. Then the all-important civil rights revolution of the 50s, 60s, and 70s inspired women's efforts for reproductive choice and equal opportunity. These strides, in turn, gave birth to the largest women's political action organization this world has ever seen, to wit, our own wonderful National Organization for Women. So I recap this business of exactly where it is we have been in the past 30 years. We have literally changed not only society's laws, but society's language, with revolutionary terms like reproductive freedom, family planning, sexual harassment, mandatory child support, rape crisis center, affirmative action, and so on. Today, hundreds more women and girls compete in the Olympics because of Title IX anti-discrimination policies. And today, there has been a dramatic increase of women in law, medicine, business, and a substantial growth in the number of women earning PhDs and other advanced degrees. There are more women owning their own businesses and operating professional offices. Many, if not all women, can obtain safe, legal abortion and birth control. And we have indeed made women's health issues a central focus of both government and politics. 11 states, with New York not yet among them, also prohibit job and housing discrimination based on people's sexual or affectional orientation. So yes, we have made tremendous gains. But it is also true that today we continue to fight for some of the same rights as were sought 30 years ago. We are still fighting for the basic human right to control our own bodies. We are still paid considerably less than men. We still hold the lower paying jobs, and we still constitute the majority of the uninsured. Women and children still make up the preponderance of people on welfare, and women continue to be the victims of terrible violence. We certainly still do suffer sexual harassment in the workplace and at school, but because of our established, history-making, proven successful women's movement, we are talking about these abuses, and they are today part and parcel of every politician's promises. This constant, unrelenting feminist spotlight we shine through media, organization, and daily personal contact. It self-assures that someday these issues will be resolved. The question is when? Now, or only after another decade of reactionary increments against us? For the arguments against us have become more chameleon-like, trickier, and better organized. Indeed, a tax-exempt pseudo-religious satellite televangelist empire runs rampant over its 501c3 IRS status to campaign nationwide on a moment-to-moment basis against accurate information about women's health, same-gender orientation, AIDS prevention, and this country's previously treasured and constitutionally ordained separation of church and state. I am talking about the Christian Coalition. To further complicate matters, the women's movement is victim of its own success, experiencing backlash to our victories. While the underlying issues of date rape, domestic violence, sexual harassment, etc., have become mainstream societal topics, this very phenomenon makes it appear as though we no longer need a women's movement. And this is the crux of today's crossroads. Women and men who are loath to call themselves feminists, a term the mass media has tarnished to almost cartoon-level contempt, fully embrace the basic tenets of feminism. For example, equal pay for equal work, reproductive freedom, equal opportunity regardless of race, gender, and orientation. But they assume these fights are won, because some of them actually are. And others are constantly in the spotlight, where we are keeping them. Of this, we need to remind our sympathizers, lest forgotten history again repeats itself. In addition, the countenance of our enemy is now blurred, with the contemporary purveyors of destruction showing new and smiling faces. We need to expose these flim-flam artists, for the National Organization for Women is the persistent target of right-wing fundamentalist Christian coalition politicos who attempt to upstage us in the mainstream newspapers, radio, and national television. As for history repeating itself, one must exclaim that the very same slanders told against N.O.W. are precisely those hurled against Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton 1½ centuries ago. The distortions and lies did not work then, and they will not work against us. It is very much up to us to see that they do not work today. We must expose right-wing rhetoric and be ever vocally mindful that no matter what religious or pseudo-philanthropic robe dignifies patriarchal dominance, it is still one class of people ruling another, and this is still the antithesis of our movement, our Constitution, and our country. As for those of us who have come to believe the visibility of our half-won issues indicates less than constant vigilance on our part, I must warn very sharply against complacency, because this country is in a slow boil. Many of you have heard the boiled frog story. Drop a frog in a pot of boiling water and she'll jump right out. But drop her in a pot of slowly heating water and she's going to sit there. And finally, she'll stay long enough until she boils to death. When the Republican contract came forth 3 years ago, progressives everywhere were flailing against it because the water was quite obviously boiling dangerously. But Ralph Reed was smoother and more subtle than Pat Buchanan and Pat Robertson, and some people have failed to realize that the temperature around them is slowly rising. Because the temperature has been rising ever so slowly, many do not realize they are being boiled alive. And as leading feminists in a leading state chapter of the largest feminist organization in the world, it is very much our place to recall that the fight for women's rights is a lifelong commitment, not a temporary job. We need to reawaken sleeping advocates and remind them that without their knowledge, their experience, and their energies, backlash could take us over and cost us decades or even scores of patriarchal recidivism. Today, the women and men of now have to be stronger and more clever than ever before. We must be as resilient as Susan B. Anthony, who traveled the state by sleigh in winter, lodging in freezing rooms during her speaking tours to fight for women's freedoms. We must be as tough as the leathery Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Sojourner Truth, both of whom negotiated currents of controversy, not only without, but also within the women's movement. We must hold these tireless, ever-resilient pioneers as the remarkable women they were and realize they did all they did without computers, fax machines, horseless carriages, and foundation support. And of what does today's very special backlash consist? Why, it is the very essence of patriarchy at every turn. It is the Promise Keepers. It is the conservative Republican ideology, the conservative Democratic ideology, the Catholic hospital mergers which ban family planning and access to safe legal abortion service, and it is sometimes even each other. Yes, today there is hovering a monumental issue, both insidious and deceptive, which threatens every woman and every man. This issue pits woman against woman and people of color against whites. And the issue is not a new issue, but rather the very old issue of segregation in America. This issue is one of using taxpayer dollars to segregate girls in the public educational system, and it represents perhaps one of the greatest threats yet. First, we have allowed government to underfund the educational programs in our schools, relegating the safety of school children a non-priority. Second, a dangerous wave of conservative ideologues have manipulated desperate parents into supporting segregation as a trade-off for their children's safety and education. And all this treachery is being accomplished with taxpayer dollars. Yes, well-financed right-wing think tanks around this country are developing satellite schools like the Harlem Girls Leadership School to divide and conquer the women's groups and to drive a wedge between people of color and whites. Their hidden agenda is to overturn every civil rights precedent established by the U.S. Supreme Court and every civil rights law enacted by Congress. I am referring to cases such as Brown versus Board of Education, which prohibits racial segregation of public schools. And I am referring to statutes such as Title IX, affirming that no person on the basis of sex shall be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal assistance. In New York City, a right-wing group concocted the Harlem Girls Leadership School, one of these tax-funded all-girls facilities whereof I speak here. 164 Hispanic girls were taken from a rundown school in District 4 and segregated into a separate school. This ingenious plan has very effectively catapulted Hispanic parents against white parents and women against women, and a perfect example of the old divide and conquer strategy. What's at stake is larger than the 164 girls at the Harlem Girls' School. What's going on behind the Wizard of Oz curtain also includes vouchers, a dirty little word which we should remember for taxpayer funding of religious training through the public school system. And it won't happen overnight, but it will happen gradually, slow boil style, all in the name of bettering girls and all in the name of bettering education for children of color. One has to admire them. It is a brilliant plan to take all our hard-earned language and rights and turn allies against each other, simultaneously segregating girls and people of color, all the while advancing their precious right-wing religious and political agenda. Do you know what Christian Coalition founder, televangelist Pat Robertson was caught on tape saying at a recent meeting? Divide and conquer. Well, they've done a wonderful job of that with the Republican contract, which I learned inside out on Now New York State's behalf, and decried around this good state only 3 years ago. Now the Christian Coalition has infiltrated the educational system in what they think is the best way yet to spread patriarchal, theocratic doctrine via taxpayer dollars. And of course, I need not mention, this means your money and mine. We have learned the Manhattan Institute that created the Harlem Girls' School is very much a right-wing think tank. Participants include Charles Murray, author of The Bell Curve, claiming people of color are less intelligent than whites. Diane Ravitch, intricately connected with the Manhattan Institute, has claimed for years that there is no discrimination in the schools or inequities in girls' math and science performance, hence no gender equity gap. She lobbied Congress to repeal Title IX and scale back funding for the Women's Educational Equity Act, known as WEA, and the lobbying is successful. Funding of WEA has in fact been scaled back from over $10 million 20 years ago to barely $1.5 million today. Ravitch also opposed the Equal Rights Amendment and continues to be one of the major brain trusts of the Manhattan Institute, itself the brainchild of the Ann Rubinstein Tisch, now married to the son of the former owner of CBS. Remember, it was CBS that produced a 60-minute segment presenting just the segregationist side of the Harlem Girls story, pitting so-called white now New York City and its president, Ann Connors, against people of color and other women. I debated Seymour Flagel, former superintendent of schools of District 4, on a CBS radio talk show which aired all across this country last month. Seymour works at the Manhattan Institute, who orchestrated the segregation of the 164 Hispanic girls into an all-girls school paid for by taxpayer dollars. I asked Seymour, when there is sexual harassment in the workplace, do we isolate all the women employees, or do we train employers and employees about sexual harassment and educate them about the law? When girls are performing poorly in the school system due to unequal teaching methods and curriculum, do we segregate the girls, or do we retrain the school staff and change the curriculum? There are numerous studies which document unequal teaching methods applied to girls' instruction. Inferior teaching of girls in the classroom is not the only problem. The curriculum being taught in our elementary and secondary schools itself has barely any information on girls' and women's contributions. There is a severe shortage of girls' role models in our classrooms. Of course, the usual textbook model is of males who solve problems and perform heroic acts, while girls and women, if they appear at all, are victims, passive, or simply idiotic. Our school children are inundated with male inventors, authors, artists, doctors, adventurers, and leaders. Textbooks, which made every notable man or boy in history, literature, and beyond, fail to mention at all any women or girls. Women and girls in literature, the arts, and the professions are simply non-existent. Girls and boys graduate high school unable to name 5 notable women. And this absence of women in our educational schools is in and of itself an act of sabotage against all of us in this room. It is a message that the lives, history, and contributions of women is unimportant. And it is not unlike our effort to retrieve suffragist statues from the United States Capitol building cellar. So do we now use taxpayer dollars to segregate girls in the 1.5 million student population in New York City? Do we also segregate boys in other places? Or do we educate staff and administrators of our constitutionally established co-ed public schools, training them in equal attention and curriculum for boys and girls? In my debate with Seymour Flagel, you can't blame him, his name is Seymour. I hope there's none in the room. I said, Seymour, if you want to help girls, then you have to educate and help boys and school staff. I challenged him to provide this opportunity in a co-ed school funded with taxpayer dollars, and then there would be no problem from the National Organization for Women. I said that what he was creating was a girls' island in education. Creating a girls' island in the education system does nothing to prepare and teach girls and boys about the dynamics of working and living together. Creating a girls' island of education does nothing to educate boys as to women and girls' role models. And it ignores any attempt to build bridges of communication and respect between the genders. Creating a girls' island of education does nothing to undo workplace discrimination and sexual harassment, which each girl will ultimately face when she is dumped back into the world of everyday co-ed living and survival. I told Seymour he was ignoring the other 1.5 million other public school children in New York City, and I exposed on the air to the listeners of over 170 radio stations the real plan behind the wizard's curtain. I said the Manhattan Institute's plot is to create single-sex schools at taxpayer expense and to introduce a voucher system supporting sectarian religious training in these public-funded schools. Let me tell you about other attempts to segregate students, and then let's draw the final curtain on the wizards of theocracy. In Brooklyn, they tried to create an African-American boys' school, but the black community and local chapter of the NAACP saw through the long-range plan to reverse Brown versus Board of Education and blew this plot out of the water. In Milwaukee, however, the right achieved no small amount of African American support for a voucher system whereby children attend religious schools at taxpayer expense. Indeed, some minority parents were so desperate for a decent, safe education for their children that they traded religious freedom for safety. And in the state of California, Governor Pete Wilson has launched the most ambitious experiment in single-sex education, encouraging school districts to create separate but equal girls and boys academies for middle and high school students. And this is only the beginning. Tacky, who is a friend of the Manhattan Institute, introduced charter schools legislation. 2 key voucher bills to fund private schools with taxpayer dollars have been introduced in Congress with the full support of Gingrich and the Republican majority. These bills declare that the single-sex schools funded by taxpayer dollars do not constitute discrimination. I can hear Title IX crumbling like an ancient stone monolith in a major earthquake. Back when I spent 16-hour days for 6 months monitoring every burp of the Republican contract, I came to understand the intricate way in which each of the contract's 10 parts intertwined. Each element alone could chip away at our civil rights, legal rights, environmental rights, healthcare rights, reproductive rights, financial stability and welfare. But together, the parts of the contract rolled like a slow tidal wave to eventually destroy everything we hold dear. We must never forget or underestimate for one moment that not only are these the same individuals that we are now fighting, but their scheme is to set up separate and distinct camps to annihilate piece by piece everything we have fought for. It is a diabolical plan, and the Harlem Girls' School is no innocent creation of nature. It is part of a carefully constructed plan to destroy our rights. I know we are so tired of fighting the same old battles and watching the tremendous accomplishments we worked so hard to achieve, chipped and pounded away at day after day. It is most disheartening to have to struggle within our own women's community to help each other to see what is really going on and somehow, at the same time, educate others outside the community as to the long-range dangers. But one reality remains constant. We can't be nice little girls hiding the truth. We can't preserve the feelings of others and sacrifice truth. We must keep our eye on the ball and know with certainty that the long-range objective of these dangerous and brilliant villains is to destroy everything you have worked your lifetime to create. Not to destroy it in one day, but over many years, and to use our friends to help them destroy, at a slow boil, our precious rights. This is perhaps the most painful truth of all. I know with certainty Now's position on this issue is the correct one. Being a pragmatist and a fairly decent strategist, I am no fool. We are developing sound bites and simple messages to educate people as to what is going on here. And we have to continue to face fear head on and do what is right so that tomorrow we can not regret taking the easy, silent way out. Ironically, coincidentally, the Now New York State Foundation, which we created this summer, and the education program I envisioned over 1 year ago, and which I am seeking grants for, is designed to deal with the gender inequity problems in the public school system in a co-educational setting. Close your eyes for one moment. Really, close your eyes. I'm not going to leave. Envision every elementary and high school in this state teaching girls and boys equally the contributions of girls and women in history, medicine, the arts, literature, and exploration. Every child will learn the name of Lucy Stone, Bell Hooks, Carrie Chapman Catt, Victoria Woodhull, Martha Wright, Mary Frances Berry, Lucretia Mott, Sarah and Angelina Rimke, Mary Wollstonecraft, and on and on and on. Can you open your eyes? The Now New York State Foundation will develop a curriculum to train teachers and staff to treat girls equally, and will also develop curriculum to be taught in the schools to students in English, history, biology, arts, and all other classes. This is part of the answer. I know this education program idea, which we are developing, will take time to create, but we will do it. But I need your help to get it off the ground. If you are moved by this enormous educational agenda which we are undertaking, please join us this evening from 7:30 to 9 o'clock in Suite 300 for our Now New York State Foundation reception, and show us your support and help us raise funds for this education program. We need your ideas, we need your energy, and we also need your help financially. We need to recreate the educational system in New York State. When the faces of the patriarchy are clear for all to see, it is easy to point out the dangers present. But when they are disguised as icons with friendly messages, smiles, and promises to keep, we must defrock the wolves of their sheep's clothing. For the oppression of women is insidious and subtle, and the lie that we are already equal is a sword against our lives. These dangers whereof I speak are the very reason I ran for president in this greatest women's organization that ever was. And it is why that 3 years ago I memorized every line of the so-called Republican contract for America and traveled around the state inveighing against its harmful provisions. That journey took me to your presidency to steer our dynamic group of activists back onto the activist track. I have spent my entire career in public and private service fighting for justice. 20 years ago, I sat at the top of the 100 steps of the state capitol in Albany and studied the horizon. I was a student at Albany State University with a burning passion to improve the lives of women in this state. I was so lucky to be the beneficiary of laws which benefited my life as a young woman. I felt fortunate to be alive at that time. And yet I understood that the struggle for equal rights was not over. As I sat there, a lonely student, without contacts, without women mentors such as there are today, I began to have a vision. I made a lifetime commitment to learn the workings of government, and I decided then and there to continue the struggle for justice for women. My journey through the hallowed halls of state politics in Albany led me from Capitol tour guide to Assembly Speaker's legislative analyst. I learned how state and local governments operate and brought this experience with me to my job as prosecutor of sex crimes and domestic violence offenses. Although in my private law practice I helped women get custody, child support, and orders of protection, the most challenging and rewarding experience has been the past 7 years as Now New York State lobbyist and this immediate past year as your Now New York State president. So far, we have established a professional office in Albany and have reached out to thousands of businesses, elected officials, nationwide media, and organizations. We have published a widely read statewide newspaper and generated a tremendous amount of print and air media coverage, including front-page coverage from several upstate newspapers. We stand now at a crossroads to meet the challenge of reawakening complacent activists and birthing new ones. Because so much of the work we do is educational, we instituted the brand new Now New York State Foundation to educate on an equal curriculum basis children and young adults about women's achievements in history, science, literature, and beyond. As I have stated here today, we are developing a program to require such a curriculum in the schools of this state, because it is only through early and continuous education of our children that we can begin to change the way people think about women and girls, thereby building both the respect and the self-respect that will eradicate sexual harassment, violence against women, and that will facilitate the equal treatment of girls and women across the board. Our first objectives are strong laws, strong enforcement, and strong constitutional protections. Second, we must focus on privacy rights as being the very basis of freedom for all human beings. We must affirm the constitutional right to privacy in our laws, particularly in reproductive and sexual areas. We surely must, in all areas, affirm privacy to worship the goddess or god we speak to, if we believe in one. Privacy to exercise the sexual orientation we experience. Privacy to have our choice of the books we choose to read, absent government censorship. Privacy so that individual women's lives and health come first and foremost, and never held hostage to the state's concern for a fetus. Privacy so that women possess the right to consent to be pregnant and continue a pregnancy if they so choose. Privacy to make these personal, private decisions and to exercise a constitutional right to life and health of all born individuals. Third, we must take advantage of the business community we have helped to create and obtain support and membership from the commercial enterprise. We need to direct our energies into establishing new networks of advocates whose support is not dependent upon who is in the White House. We can develop liaisons with certain businesses around the state. We must take our power as consumers and translate that into revenue to develop our political action programs. We can make the National Organization for Women in New York State a consumer commodity which is good for certain businesses and which promotes equality for women. We are a vast natural resource with incredible power and influence in the decision-making of not just political systems, but also in the purchasing power within the family and the marketplace. It is time to start to exercise this power. And fourth, but not least, is the all-important education agenda, which I outlined earlier in my remarks. Now New York State is about to embark on the next phase of our development. We need your help. We need your ideas. And we need your contacts to network an explosion of alliances. We will stand firm on our positions, but we will build new alliances. We must remember the world our foremothers sought and realize the nation they envisioned for women in 1997. We must continue to define our plan, step by step, as to where we want women to be in 100 years. If the year 2097 is tomorrow, then the planning is today. As the incredible women of Now New York State, we have started to craft this plan. This history is being created by the efforts of all Now New York State women and men who work with the chapters and State Now. Together, we can make over the political system. We will do the same with the educational system, healthcare system, and every other system which keeps women down. Together, we will realize these visions. Today, I am again sitting at the top of another 100 steps, looking out at the horizon, but with one major difference. I am standing alongside the dynamic members of the National Organization for Women who work with great dedication and energy, looking back on the work of Susan B. Anthony, Alice Paul, Harriet Tubman, and our own past Now New York State leaders. I know with certainty that when the girls and women of the year 2097 look back 100 years, they will say we were a formidable and incredible force, and because of us, their lives will have been better. Today, I continue my work with you to realize our vision.
It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker today. Marcia Gillespie is the editor of Ms. Magazine. She is the former editor-in-chief of Essence Magazine, one of America's most influential women's magazines, which led to her winning the National Magazine Award. She was named one of the 50 Faces for America's Future by Time Magazine. She is a noted lecturer, consultant, and writer. Marcia Gillespie has been a strong advocate for women. She carries with her a fearless devotion to this movement, never yielding to controversy or debate. So, I know you're all anxious to hear from her, so I'd like to introduce Marcia Gillespie. Thank you so much. Appreciate this. Thank you. I've got to tell you though, after, listening to the illustrious president, I was like, girl, you better just pack your bag and get back on that train. Because she is, you just did it all. It's like, I was kind of going through my little mental, Now, come on. I got to talk to them. I was kind of going through, my little checklist of, what was in my speech, and I was kind of going, well, she did that, she did that, and she did that, you know what I mean? I feel like the page is kind of flying over your head. Anyway, I am delighted to be here. And I'm especially delighted to be here because we are, at a crossroads in this country. We are at a time that is going to test us all. And real concern about the ways in which, we are, I want to call it, girding ourselves for the struggles that are going to come. Now, in the last century, one of the men who stood side by side with women in their struggle for freedom was Frederick Douglass, who reminded us that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And I think we have learned in these last 30 years that for every step, ahead we've taken, it's been, a bit like a perverse version of the, that game, it's called Mother May I. Some of you may if you are over 50 like I am, you know what I mean? Mother May I was that game in which, you said, may I take a giant step? And, the person leading the game said yes, maybe, or no, 2 steps back.
So that, you know, what we've been in process of is we've been taking giant steps forward, and meanwhile there have been these people trying to push us 2 steps to the side and 3 steps back, and you know what I mean? There's a constant push and pull. There's this feeling sometimes that, you know, wait a minute, haven't we been saying this stuff, you know, over and over and over and over again, and how come people aren't getting it? I have a friend who always says, you know, oh, do we always have to do Feminism 101 when we know it's like, you know, there are all these other issues that we've got to, you know, take on. But the truth is, yeah, we always got to do Feminism 101 because not everybody was in the room at the same time. And there were always new people coming to the party. Now, one of the things that I think is clear to us as we look at this dawning new century is that in some ways, the same challenges that confronted our foremothers and fathers, more than almost 149, hitting 150 years in 1998 ago, it's in falls, are really the same issues that are confronting us now. How to make a movement truly become reflective of the society as a whole. How to counter all of the negative, you know what I mean, and distorting messages about who we are and what we stand for. How to broaden our reach while, you know, securing what we've won, while dreaming the dream about where we're going to go next. And how to, in fact, if we're going to be real honest with ourselves in the stillness of our spirit, also, you know, and address our doubts and some of our own trepidations about, you know, did we take the right path? Could we have said it a better way? Was there, you know, another way to do this thing? You know, because the truth is, you know, I'm always describing this journey of feminism as being one in which, you know, it's a bit like stepping off the side of a cliff and having the faith to believe that there really is land under your feet. It's not 10,000 feet down with a big splat at the end. We've been, therefore, stepping into air, if you will be, you know, for 150 years now. Stepping into air to say that there is a possible alternative to this thing called patriarchy. That there is a way in which people can live, you know, with decency and equity and respect. Where, you know, all of us get, you know what I mean, get our space in the sun. This is, you know what I mean, big stuff that we've been dreaming. And, you know what I mean, it's scary stuff sometimes. I don't know about the rest of you all, but I know it's sometimes scary for me. Because, you know, it's like you say, well, I hope I did this right. I hope that we, you know, we got it right. And we, you know, are also dealing with an enemy that has become, you know what I mean, ever smarter in the ways in which to undo us, if you will. But, you know, while it's smarter because it's slicker, a lot of the ways in which our enemies have come at us in these last 30 years have been, in fact, merely, you know, I mean, modeled on the ways in which they always have. You said it, my sister. She talked about divide and conquer, which has been, you know, part and parcel of what's happened all along. But, you know, the truth also is, you know, and I think that we have to do that kind of truth talking to each other. We have not been as smart as we should have been. We have sometimes, you know, allowed ourselves to become a bit too myopic in the ways in which we have gone about doing ourselves. Because we have assumed that, like, you know, like, we could just keep talking the big talk and everybody else would catch up with us. But here's the real truth. You know, if you're a feminist out here in America, 9 times out of 10, the mainstream media only picks up the phone to call us when they want us to react to something. You know what I mean? It's not because they want us to talk about things like, you know, the economy's stupid, or, you know what I mean, why are they still building stealth bombers, or, you know what I mean, the list could go on and on. It is only when they say, oh, let's get a feminist, you know, because we know we'll get her to talk about that, you know, and they're waiting for this kind of knee-jerk reaction. You know, it is still not the ways in which, you know, this movement of ours needs to be validated, because we are much more than reactive, as we well know. We've been dreaming a very proactive dream, you know, and moving to make it happen. But here's the real cold truth. Look around us. We still are a movement that is too narrow in what it reflects out there. This isn't the rainbow. And we've got to find a way to make the rainbow part of the room. We've got to talk about what is going on. What is going on that has, you know, continued to divide women of color from white women on this issue in such, dramatically large numbers. We gotta, it's like, I know as an African-American woman, part of my mission in this life is that I have to be, continue to, I call it, peep the wolf. And peeping the wolf means I have to talk constantly about the ways in which, this society has structured the debate so that when you talk about race, gender gets pushed off the table. And that supposedly when you talk about gender, race doesn't have anything to do with it. We've also been all suckered into believing, in this country, that there were only like 2 people in the room. There were black people and there were white people. Excuse me, I look around every day in New York and I know there's a whole lot more in this room than that. Do you know what I mean? That, my Latina sisters certainly want to say, and what about me? And how are we reflecting what their concerns are? And our Native sisters too look up and say, and what about us? Now, I know that as feminists, we think about this and we talk about these issues a lot. What we struggle with is how to begin to build the bridges that last, knowing that they're going to constantly be under assault every time, when we walk out of the room. It's like, simple stuff that, we haven't yet figured out, and that is how to keep the conversation flowing so that we're not just, I want to call it, the same 22 people talking to each other all the time. Now, some of it is, I've kind of figured out some of this for myself, and it's still a learning thing, but I want to share some of this because it's really important as we talk about America in this next century. Let's face it, my sisters and my few brothers who are in the room. Let's be real honest about what is this country going to look like. In this next century, this country is going to become ever more diverse. We're talking about the fact that we're talking about Latin peoples as being, the largest quote-unquote minority. Well, I hate that word. Group in this country. We're talking about a society that is going to become multilingual, like it or not, with all these people who want to do English forever now and only thing that people can talk. They haven't walked down the streets I walk in New York City every day. We're going to have a society in which there are going to be, we're going to see waves of people as we have in these last 20 years, despite the kinds of, anti-immigrant laws that are being passed, who are going to continue to come to these shores from parts of the world, that half of us couldn't even find on the maps because they don't teach geography anymore. We're going to see a society that is also one in which all of the issues of class are going to be ever more on the table. As again, that very small percentage of people continues to gobble up all the resources and the money in this country. We're going to have, a lot of people in this country who are going to be part of the have-nots. And a lot of them are people who are really going to be shocked to death to discover that, all that plastic that they've loaded themselves up with has only loaded them down into a spiraling downturn in what they thought was a secure economic future for themselves. Because this country, in terms of the way it is being organized and run, is less about the boundaries of this United States and much more about the ways in which, businesses with allegiances to no one except themselves are going to be structuring and are already structuring the ways in which this globe is going to evolve. So what you are thinking of is only a smokescreen, as you all well know, for what's coming down the pipe. Now, if we're going to look at that, part of our issues have to be, we have to redo Feminism 101 for a lot of people who are going to be in the room and who are already here. We have to talk about, in real, I want to quote, sister gut ways, about what it has meant and means still to be female in this society. We have to talk about the fact that, for every little battle that we think we've run, somebody right now is getting the shit kicked out of her by some man in some house that should have been safe. We have to talk about the fact that no one wants to talk about, the incredible abuse that is happening to children all throughout this country and has been going on for so long. If we don't talk about that, we don't even have to say the F word if that's what scares people, though of course you don't have to be saying the F word as much as possible. But I want to first engage people in conversation who have been scared away from what this movement is about. And if that means that I put on, my high heels, which sit in my closet, You know what I mean? You know, my church lady hat, and you know, get busy. That's what I'm going to do, because we've got to find the ways to make the clicks happen all over again. 30 years ago, we did consciousness raising, and we sat around in rooms, and we talked about what our lives were like. We talked about them from our hearts, and from our heads, and from our bellies, and we shared truths and, you know, things that were quote-unquote secrets, and we felt shamed about, and, you know, ashamed of, and worried about, you know, the size of our hips, and the, you know, the men who did and didn't, and the women who we wanted to, or whatever. But we talked about it, and through that talk, we began to understand, you know what I mean, that it wasn't what was happening in one woman's life. It was about the truths of women's lives that we were speaking. We need to start consciousness raising again. We need to, okay? You know what? However and wherever, what we do, I'm saying is we gotta cast our buckets down. And we've got to start talking once again about what it means to be female in a society and in a world in which women are not free. We have to talk about it in ways that women who, you know, felt to themselves, oh, I am not a feminist, I could never do that, suddenly start sitting up and paying attention. We have to be as smart as our enemies and smarter. And let's face it, we are. We are. We are. We are. You know? Now, I'm not, you know, one of those people who starts to despair because I see the way in which, you know, this conservatism has been on the rise. Because, in fact, we can turn that to our advantage. They're getting smugger and smugger in their sense of what they can do in this country. And as they do turn up the heat, what we have to do is help make it burn people enough so that they'll begin to say, now I see what you're talking about. You know? Now, that might sound like, oh no, we're supposed to be turning down the heat because we want people to, you know what I mean, all move together. Sometimes heat's important to get people's energies back. What's happened is, you know what I mean, a lot of people have lost that kind of energy, and they're feeling like, well, we can all kind of coast and float. Well, we can't. Those consciousness raising sessions help turn the heat up again. And we need to do that. We need to do it especially because there are a lot of young women, not just, you know, and older women, but also because of our younger sisters who are coming behind us. You know what I mean? And trying to carry the torch, you know, into the next century. We need to talk with them and listen to them about how the realities of these few changes that we have made, you know, have played in their lives, and what still are the shackles that bind them. Because we have to help give them the vocabulary that's going to carry this movement forward, not just for the next 100 years, but for the next, you know, millennium. Let's be real truthful here. You know, if anybody in this room thought that this thing was going to be done in any of our lifetimes, then I don't know what you were smoking in the 60s. I know for sure, I never imagined it was going to be. I never imagined it was going to be done in the lifetime of my children's children's children. But what I always had the faith to believe, which is what I believe you all do, because otherwise, why are we here? Okay? Was that sooner or later this mountain called patriarchy would fall. Now, if we're going to bring the mountain down, though, in addition to doing the kind of consciousness raising womanness talk that we need to do, we also have to do, I want to call it, a whole level of talk with men, which is different from the level of talk that we have done in this past 30 years. Interesting, and this is not a plug, but I guess it is, you know, editor of Ms. Okay. We are doing this issue in the next issue, the November-December issue of Ms., in which we're doing a whole thing about do men get it. It's an issue which I'm very pleased about because, you know, we start out by putting the absolute archetype of maleness on the cover, meaning Ken, you know, the Ken doll, Ken, Barbie, I mean, who else could you put down, the Ken on the cover. Anyway, and one of the things that we did was we asked a group of men, not men that we knew, okay, to come together in a room and just talk about manhood, about women, about the movement, the women's movement. And none of the editors were there. We didn't moderate it. We asked the man to moderate the group. One of the things that came out loud and clear in that was that one of the men said, you know, I no longer know what it means to be a man. Like, what is the definition of masculinity? How do I define myself, my gender, if you will? found that really interesting because what we see is how that plays out in the society. You know, for all of the things that the Promise Keepers are, and all of the threats that they represent, there's one thing that we have to be real clear about, which is at the kernel of what drives a lot of people into this movement. And that is this profound sense of loss that a lot of men feel. You know, I mean, they don't know what their models are anymore. You know, while we have been bonding and hanging together and raising hell and making changes and giving each other, you know, the significant woman looks, you know, the ones where we go, you know what I mean? Men have been trying to figure out, you know what I mean, so what am I supposed to do now? Because so many of the things that were, you know, the hallmarks of what was about being a man suddenly don't play the same way in this world. So yes, you know what I mean, what they're doing is they're hungry, a lot of men, and they're searching, and they're going, you know, they're looking for, like most people at this particular point in this society, for easy answers to this big hunger. You see, because it's, you know, and of course it's patriarchy and this wonderful capitalist system that we have. You know what I mean? It's past masters at doing what I call easy answers for real complex questions. Because, you know, it's not saying to them, you know, part of what's making you feel so empty is the price of this, you know, industrialized technological age that we've entered into. That, you know, part of why you feel that you need to have something call out to Jesus, you know what I mean, Mohammed, whatever it's going to be, and moving towards this kind of, you know, religious dogma that says stand up, sit down, you know, move to the right when we tell you to. It's because, you know what I mean, you have been stripped. You know, you do have a soul in stress. And while we have been finding ways to bond with each other and build strength, men haven't had it. So they've been, you know, following people like Robert Bly, some of them out into the woods, and, you know, beating drums, and, you know what I mean, trying to find it. And I don't want to make fun of this, because what I'm really saying is it's really about profound loss. And one of the things we need to also do as we move into this new century is find ways to help men come to the right side of it, of others. What do I mean by this? You know what I mean? About the fact that, you know, to be a good man is to be a good pro-feminist. To be a good man is to work for a world in which you don't have to have a cop, you know, to prove that, you know, somebody's underneath you. To be a good man does not mean that you have to show your dominance by controlling women or children. To be a good, I mean, this is all the stuff, you know, we've been saying all along, but we got to say it more, we got to say it louder, we got to say it clearer. And we've got to make men feel that, you know what I mean, that this is a big table, this table called feminism. There is room at this table. Do you know what I mean? For them as well as for us, because this was never about just a woman's only party. This was always about changing a world, a whole world, a world in which men and women live. And we need to put that into our agenda as we move forward into this next century. Well, now, having said that, I know that you're all getting hungry. I don't want to take up a whole lot more of your time, but I have a couple of just quick little things I want to continue with saying, and then I have to come back to this whole thing about, you know what I mean, this business of race. I can't not do that standing here, you know what I mean, with this chocolate brown skin. And that is, you know, if we don't find a way to bridge this gap, one of the things I've been proud of now for has been the work that has been, you know, undertaken by this organization to try to bridge this gap. You know, we're not gonna win the day. Now, one thing to pass the resolutions. It's another thing to make it part of one's life. And that becomes the question, do you each, just like I do, have to figure out and ponder, what does that mean? Does it mean, you know, joining the NAACP? Yeah, maybe you do. Does this mean, you know what I mean, going out of one's way to make sure that one, you know what I mean, does more than just have passing conversations with people of color who may come into your world? Yeah, it do. Because the fact is, we're a real segregated society still. You know what I mean? Does it mean saying to somebody, you know, no, it's not like I want to know a colored person today, but, you know, girlfriend, I kind of have a good vibe here. You want to go out and have some lunch? You want to just, you know, take a walk together? Let's see, maybe if we have some things. What's a movie you want to see? You know, we have to make some reaching out here, which isn't always about, you know, come to my meeting. Because if we haven't made any other way to connect with people, people are not going to come to our meetings. It doesn't work that way. I think we know that. Then we have to do, I think, some more stuff. Some of the other stuff has to be, we have to talk about the ways in which, you know, race and gender come into play, you know, side by side. The president really got it. You know, when she talked about the ways in which it's being played out in the educational system. But those are the same ways it's being played out right through, you know, this society. What we have to be able to do is constantly say, well, hey, wait a minute. There's more to the story than what's being laid out here on the table. We have to get wiser. We have to also be willing to be rebuffed. You know, a lot of people are going to say, oh, I don't want to talk to her. I mean, I think I know her story. But, you know, I think we're strong enough to handle being rebuffed. You know what I mean? Because we know we've got a bigger goal in mind. And last, but certainly not least, I think we need to stop being so nice to each other sometimes when we're together and spend some more time being as bone honest as we can be about what really, you know, matters in our lives and to each other. Because through the politeness of this movement sometimes, I tell you, I almost want to choke. We don't always see eye to eye on everything. You and I know that. There's a lot of disagreement in this movement. There are lots of points of view in this movement. There is not, you know, it doesn't need to have to be one necessary part, you know, party line on everything. But if we don't talk and argue and fuss and fight among ourselves, we're never even going to come to some form of consensus about stuff. And if, you know, and if we want to have women of color, for example, who are backing, you know, this idea of this all-girls school, start to come together with us, we have to be prepared to go where they are and argue and fuss and fight with them about this issue. We got to roll up our sleeves. We got work to do. Now, my wind, I have to kind of wind up now, you know, so this is my wind up section. I didn't become a feminist easily. I was suspicious of this movement when this phase of it first started. Yeah, sure, I read Betty Friedan in the 60s, you know, but I mean, she was talking about something that had nothing to do with me. Everybody in my family worked. You know, most of the women in my family worked taking care of people who also lived in better houses in the suburbs, which I grew up in. So I didn't know what she was talking about. The aspiration that I knew from most black women I knew at that time, and we were Negroes then, was that, you know, I mean, bottom line was, we wanted to be able to stay home, get our nails done. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what it looked like to us, you know, when you're looking on the outside in, you know, okay, fine. I mean, it was like some of the stuff resonated, but it really didn't, okay? And then, you know, I started going in the 70s, and we went to some of the women's meetings and stuff, you know what I mean, and I'm listening, and some of it sounds good, and everybody mentioned Sojourner Truth. I'm sure I knew who she was. I mean, come on, now, who's an American Studies major in college, or some two things. But, I mean, I kept hearing how people thought that by suddenly becoming feminists, it meant that, you know, they were now purified, you know, the issues of race, that was about those white men, you know, those bad white men were doing all that, and, you know, nobody else had no work apologies or, you know, remorse because they weren't in it. And I'm like, well, duh, I don't think so. You know, privilege just didn't come down that way. I mean, sure, there was a price, but we got to be more honest in this. I struggled to become a feminist, is what I'm saying to you. I struggled because a lot of the stuff I heard made me somewhat nervous. You know what I mean? But at the same, you know, at the same time, there was some core truth I couldn't walk away from. Couldn't walk away from the fact that, you know, we, as Mao Zedong may say, hold up half the sky, but we sure weren't getting half of anything. I couldn't, you know, avoid the fact that as a woman who had been pregnant in her 20s and thought that the world would come to an end, what it meant to have to, you know, phone here, there, and everywhere to take one's life in one's hands to get an illegal abortion and being terrified the whole time. I couldn't forget that. I couldn't forget, you know, the neighborhood where I grew up in, where I saw women routinely being beaten by men and nobody giving a damn. I couldn't even forget what it felt like to have white policemen look at my little colored self at 12 and 13 years old and just assume because of my race and my gender that I was free. for them to, try to make and use if they could. Can't forget that stuff. Couldn't forget growing up in a Black Baptist church and at 13 years old and seeing a girl 2 years older than I called before the congregation to apologize to the church because she was pregnant. No talk about no man being called to apologize. Couldn't forget that, the feeling of rage that bubbled in me as I thought about it. Couldn't forget the ways in which, girls were almost automatically told that we had to learn how to type. You know what I mean? As if that was, that and a diaper was supposed to be, the two things we were automatically supposed to be able to do. Change one and, fix a ribbon or something. There were a lot of reasons I became a feminist, but not the least of which is because I remember the stories of my great-grandmother who was enslaved in this country. A woman who had children that without any real decision on her part, forced upon her while enslaved, who then married and had 17 more children as a married woman and left her husband when he couldn't love the children that were half white but still hers. A woman who, I heard about, who taught my great-grand-uncle to box and become a boxer, who went around the world fighting. Well, it's a kind of profession, but he wanted to do it. The woman who made my maternal grandmother a strong enough woman that she could pass down certain sentences and senses about what it could mean to be a woman. Who would tell me when other people didn't, that I could be anybody, I could do anything, I could go anywhere, that I was beautiful and that I was special, and I didn't have to look like anybody else but my own colored self. Now that's where I became a feminist because I heard from women listening around as they talked, in those kitchen table talks, women do the talking. Do you know what I mean? Stories, women's stories that made me proud to be female and made me hopeful about what we could accomplish and do. And I'm a feminist because I dare to dream and believe that it is possible to have a world where women and children are respected, where people get to live out wholly and fully the potential of what they can be. I'm a feminist because I am too damn stubborn to be anything else but an idealist. Now, everywhere I go, I like to also, end whatever words I have to say by giving praise to someone who came before me, because that's part of what we do in this movement of ours. Woman, I always give praise to Fannie Lou Hamer, because she was my mentor, she was my friend, she was my other mother, she was my inspiration. Mrs. Hamer, who most of you may know of and some of you may not, so let me take a moment. Mrs. Hamer, who grew up in the Mississippi Delta, poor, barely educated, less than a 4th grade education, sharecropper's daughter, sharecropper, or all of her adult life. And yet when, the freedom movement came to the Mississippi Delta, the bad Mississippi Delta, Fannie Lou Hamer was one of the first people locally to stand up, to be counted, to say, yes, I'm in this movement. And because she stood and became active and moved to help people register to vote and refused to be cowed, she was beaten almost to death. And yet, with a limp that she carried the rest of her life, she continued to stand for freedom. Mrs. Hamer. Mrs. Hamer, who, said to me when the women's movement got started, she said, babe, I don't think I could spell it, this feminist thing, but I sure know what it means. And she talked about what it meant to her in some very real, concrete ways. It meant to her making sure that poor black women in the state of Mississippi didn't wake up from having a baby in a clinic to find out that they'd been sterilized without their consent. It meant, a lake that was near where she lived in Ruralville, Mississippi, which they used to call Woman's Lament, because it was like she said almost every month they would fish a body of a woman, black, white, whatever, out of this lake. Woman who had been usually killed by some man, didn't need her, didn't want her, but felt that he had the right to use her and abuse her and beat her and shoot her or stab her and throw her into this body of water, that there would be an end to that kind of suffering. Mrs. Hamer, who with her belief in feminism and with her belief that, we could have true racial justice in this world, went on to challenge the National Democratic Party and brought them to their knees. I one day said to Mrs. Hamer in the 70s, when I was feeling very depressed about something, don't ask me what, you know how it can rise and fall, you read something in the paper, whatever. And I went down there to Mississippi to hang out with her because she always had made me feel good. And I said to her, how do you keep the faith? How do you just keep stepping forward? So she told me the story. I share it with you, that you go forth to do the work of this organization. There was an old woman and she was blind and very wise. And people from miles around would come to her for advice. And invariably the advice she gave them was good, and so her reputation grew. One day, two people decided that they were going to pull a trick on this old, blind woman. And they said to each other, the thing we're going to do is this. We're going to catch a bird, and we're going to hold the bird in our hands tight, beak closed, and we're going to say to that old, blind woman, we're going to say to her, is this thing in our hands living or is it dead? She says it's alive, we're going to smother the bird. But if she says it's dead, we'll let the bird fly free. A sick joke. So they caught the bird, and they brought it to this old woman's house, sitting on the porch in a rocking chair. And they said to her, this thing in our hand, is it living or is it dead? That's the question we asked her. And she sat and she rocked a while. And finally she looked up and she said, you know, I don't know. All I know is, it's in your hands. We hold the bird. Let's make sure the bird stays alive and flies free. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marsha. That was so inspiring. Oh, you're wonderful. And I did get that issue of the magazine you're talking about. Very interesting. Yeah. Just very quickly, I want to mention there's someone here at the head table, Donna Wolf-Cross. She is the author of Quote Jones. So she will be just chatting with us a little bit today. We're going to get the salad served. Mostly you're going to tell the kitchen to start serving lunch. I know you're all hungry. And Donna's going to speak with us. Did you want to speak now, Donna, after the salads are served? Okay. We'll have Donna come up after the salads are served and get you all going. You can chat a little bit, and if you want to just stand up and stretch, that's fine too. I am so privileged to say that she is. And there are many who join together and sing the song with her. You all know it. You've got a friend. Because Clarice Pollock, more than any woman I know, embodies the kind of friend who when you're down and when you're troubled and you need a helping hand and nothing's going right, you call her name. And it doesn't matter whether she's in New York or Florida or wherever she is. Many of us know that she will really, really be there. But that's not why I nominated her. I nominated Clarice because I came to know her through the National Organization for Women. And what I learned about her was that she was my very favorite all-purpose feminist. Some of us, like me, are 1, 2, or 3 issues strong. We have a gut feeling about the rest of the issues, but can't really articulate what's wrong and what's right in the name of feminism. Clarice has always done that. And what I found out is that she's not only just done that for me. She's one of the foremothers of New York State now. She's been around Westchester now and national now, and has missed fewer meetings than anyone amongst us. So I nominated Clarice because she's the best, and may I use the word radical, feminist, thinker and talker that I know. And
More important this year, Clarice left New York. Florida's gained. Yay! President Florida State Tony Van Pelt is here. New York's lost. And when I realized that we would be giving the award this year, isn't this the right time for us to honor and recognize a favorite feminist foremother of New York State now? And I want to introduce someone from Westchester now who's going to tell you a tad more about Clarice and what she has done there. May I introduce John Wegeneck?
I think everyone here, or many people here, know that Clarice joined N.O.W. practically at its inception, early 70s. I think she wrote the bylaws for now New York State in conjunction with many, many other people, but she was involved very early on. But I think the most important thing to remember that over the course of 25 years plus, she really did it all. She was a consciousness raiser, an ERA campaigner, an assertiveness trainer, reproductive and lesbian rights advocate, and a seeker of justice and protection for victims of domestic violence, at the very least. She did all of those things and more. And her dedication to all of these issues led her to positions of leadership at every level, as Phyllis has intimated, at the local level, the regional level, the state, and the national level. And in addition to that, she frequently served as N.O.W.'s liaison to other progressive groups while she was in Westchester, while seeming never to run out of ideas or energy. That most important element is running out of ideas or energy. She never seemed to suffer from that. One of Clarice's best attributes, I feel, is her direct and very persistent style. I think anybody who's known her for any period of time knows that. And it enables her to continually push our agenda forward, even now she has gone on to Florida. She's very compassionate, generous, she's a great role model, and a mentor. What we need so desperately these days are mentors for so many of us, and we really owe her a lot. It's hard to imagine Clarice not being a part anymore of Westchester now, but we'll go on because we will be inspired by her great example, and that's what we plan to do. She is a fabulous feminist, and she is very deserving of this award. So Clarice, on behalf of all of us in Westchester, and certainly all of us on the state level, we congratulate you, we thank you, and we love you a lot. Thanks.
And finally, to actually bestow the award on you and to you, Clarice, as well as Shapiro-Canter, a wonderful state president.
Clarice, would you join us up here, please? Clarice has been at every council meeting I've been to, and I haven't missed one in 8 years. She's always there, she's always offered invaluable advice. We had one council meeting, she wasn't there, I know we've missed her, and we will miss her in the future. As Phyllis has said, New York's lost, it's Florida's gain, and we know that she will do wonderful things for the state of Florida. We are going to miss you, we know it is at every national meeting, and we're going to keep in touch, and I'm still sending you all information, and I'm going to send you work assignments. Because I think that once you've been in New York State, you're never going to totally escape. It is with great love and dedication that now New York State bestows on Clarice Pollock the 1997 Woman to Woman Award for her lifelong commitment to ensure equality for women. Okay.